Criminal Justice and the Challenge of Family Ties by Dan Markel, Jennifer Collins, and Ethan Leb. Few people envied David Kaczynski. In 1996, he found some old writings by his brother Ted that were similar in tone and content to a manifesto submitted to newspapers in 1995 by a feared terrorist known to law enforcement agents as the Unabomber. David was then faced with an agonizing choice about whether to disclose his discovery to federal investigators. He ultimately revealed Ted's name, believing that he had assurances from federal authorities that they would not pursue the death penalty against his brother, whom David believed to be mentally ill. Attorney General Janet Reno decided nonetheless to pursue a capital case. David was devastated. Later, Ted Kaczynski pled guilty to charges that carried a life sentence. Subsequently, David Kaczynski became an anti-death penalty advocate. David Kaczynski is perhaps the best-known example in recent years of a family member who provided law enforcement officials with the critical information that led to the arrest of a loved one. Unsurprisingly, many family members confronted with a dilemma like David Kaczynski make an entirely different choice. Consider the Scheinbein family, for example. In 1997, a high school senior named Samuel Scheinbein was charged with murder after police found the burned and dismembered body of acquaintance in the garage of a vacant house in Maryland. But Scheinbein was never brought to trial in Maryland because he fled to Israel within days of the murder, and Israel subsequently refused to extradite him. So how was a 17-year-old able to get to Israel so quickly? Prosecutors alleged that after learning that his son was a murder suspect, Samuel's father, Sol Scheinbein, brought Samuel, who was then hiding in New York, his passport, some clothing, and a ticket to Israel. Sol also drove his son to the airport, and then flew to Israel a few days after his son, where he continues to live and work. Prosecutors in Maryland subsequently filed a misdemeanor charge against him for obstructing a possible police investigation. But because of the nature of the charge and his status as an Israeli citizen, Sol could not be extradited either. After Samuel Scheinbein pled guilty before an Israeli court and was sentenced to spend 24 years in prison, Sol gave his first interview to an Israeli newspaper. In defending his son's actions, Sol, a practicing lawyer, stated, "I did some simple soul searching, and I came to the conclusion with all due respect to the law, I am first of all a father, and only after that a citizen." Samuel Scheinbein's mother, in an earlier statement, claimed that any parents would go and would do what we are doing. The choices David Kaczynski and Sol Scheinbein made arise virtually every day in every jurisdiction, where family members have the opportunity to facilitate or obstruct enforcement of the criminal law.
All right. Do you enjoy having to testify against your friends?
No.
Would it have been easier for you if your testimony could have been against someone else, a stranger?
Not at all. Nobody.
You think it would have been hard no matter what you had to do?
Yes, ma'am.
But was it particularly hard that you have to testify against your best friend and his wife?
That's hard. It hurts.
Were you loyal to these folks before this all went down?
Yes, ma'am.
10 months ago, someone killed the father of my children. First we got divorced, and then he got murdered. In casual conversations, I don't know whether to call him my ex-late spouse or my late ex-spouse, except that late ex-spouse sounds like latex spouse. Last July, someone, and we still don't know who, shot my ex-husband point blank in the back of the head as he pulled into our garage after driving our then 3- and 4-year-old sons to preschool. It feels sacrilegious these days, even to suggest something less than heroic about my latex husband, because he was murdered. He died violently and young, and likely at the hands of a professional killer. And the media had a field day in response. I turned on the news to find photos of my children with Nancy Grace, George Stephanopoulos saying my name in reference to our acrimonious divorce, and a picture my friend took when I was her maid of honor showed as evidence why I should be treated like a murder suspect and not the mother of 2 fatherless boys. I sat on a bench last week to watch the boys play. An older woman sitting next to me commented on how adorable my boys are and asked, "What does your husband do?" I hate this question. I haven't yet said, "He doesn't do much because he's dead," but I think it sometimes. My mom and I have lived together for almost a year. She is selfless, generous, loving, and beautiful. She thinks she is fat. She once got turned down for Weight Watchers because she didn't have enough excess weight to be admitted to the program. She thinks she is stupid. My mom, who won the New York Spelling Bee for middle schoolers when she was only in the 6th grade. I'm so many of the things I am because of who my mom is and who she wants me to be. I was valedictorian of my high school. She seemed proudest that I graduated high school still a virgin. I try to draw boundaries with my mom because lately there aren't any. She is caring for my children right now so that I can be here in class, more like a co-parent than a grandmother.
He's, oh my God.
I hate to ask it now, but I have to do it now. You understand, right?
I understand. He had friends. He always meant well, but he would sometimes rub people the wrong way.
Okay.
But not anyone who would do something like this.
Anybody that he owes money to?
No, he owes money to me.
He owes money to you?
But
Okay.
not me.
Okay. All right. All right.
Oh my God, we're 4 kids. Oh. I don't know who would do this.
Okay. Well, it appears from what we've seen so far that someone intentionally hurt Daniel. Okay, intentionally. Okay, I don't
You
think.
don't know who it is.
No, and I don't
What if
think.
they come after the boys?
I don't think that's going to be. I have no indication at this time that that's a threat. All right. Where's your closest family at?
My family actually just talked to my brother this morning. My parents are in Coral Springs.
Okay.
And my brother, I have 2 brothers, but I'm very close to one of them who is in Fort Lauderdale.
Okay. All right. So that's where you're from originally, I take it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
His family's in Canada. Did they know? Did you tell them?
No, they haven't been notified
Oh my
yet.
God. His parents are gonna be devastated.
Daniel's been shot. Okay. And we have to find out why and who did this. Can you help with that?
I will try.
Okay. What I want to do right now to try to expedite things, okay, but I need your permission, is I want to take your cell phone and download all the information out of it.
Sure.
Do you have a problem with that?
No.
Okay. Would you ever ask someone to do something like this?
Not in a million years.
Okay. Do you think someone would do this for your benefit without asking you?
No.
What good does it serve?
I made my brother, the one, his name is Charlie, the one I'm really close to, he makes a lot of jokes in bad taste, and it was a joke he made. He bought the TV for me this morning that got broken, and I was talking to him about whether it made sense to pay to fix it or whether I should get a new one, and it was always his joke that, like, he knew Danny treated me badly, and it was always his joke. He said, I looked into hiring a hitman, and it was cheaper to get you this TV, so instead I got you this TV.
Okay.
I mean, he would never. He's my big brother, and he's been taking care of me since I was little, but he would never. And I told that to the repair guy this morning.
Right. That's okay.
I said, he asked me how much it cost, and I said I didn't know because it was a gift, because my brother said it was cheaper than a hitman. It was my divorce present.
Okay.
Such a horrible thing to say. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
But even my family, who felt like I had been mistreated, would never do something like this. Never.
Well, you guys have been divorced for over a year. Has there been any type of abuse in that time?
Of him towards me?
Yeah.
No. It's, he's litigious, and we have an ongoing case because the house, it shouldn't be, I don't know, it shouldn't be in my name anymore, but when we settled the case of our divorce, he said, one of the agreements the court said was, Danny wanted to stay in the house. They said, you can have the house, but you need to pay her half of the amount of what the house is worth. And he agreed to it, and then months passed and he just never paid me.
Okay.
And so we have ongoing litigation where I filed a motion in the court to have him pay me what he said he would, and he filed a counter motion for sanctions against my attorney because he thought that she did something wrong, which she didn't. But so, I mean, she withdrew from the case and was going to serve as a witness. So she's not going to lash out at him for it. She's using the legal process to do it. My parents are, very angry towards him. But even when they're around my kids, they would never say a bad word about my kid's father. They're really, really careful about that. They just like him, but they know he's the father of my kids. They would never do that.
Right.
I don't know who would be angry enough with him.
Well, that's what I have to find out.
To do something like this.
The brother that you're real close to, I have to do a lot of elimination at the same time. The brother that you're really close to, the one that joked about the TV and everything, what'd you say his name was?
Charlie.
Charlie, and he's in Fort Lauderdale?
Yeah.
Okay. Tell me what kind of car he has.
He has like 5 cars.
Can't tell me all of
He
them.
drives I think one of them is an unmarked police car.
Oh, really?
He's a bit of a character.
Okay.
So I don't know what he's driving at the time.
Right.
But I'll tell you, he's a periodontist, and he has this practice where he works from early in the morning till late at night. So if you ever wanted to find his whereabouts, he's working all day long until early in the morning till late at night, always driving to a different office and working.
Oh, he goes to different offices?
Yeah, he works in different offices all over South Florida and does implants for people. And he works really hard all the time. He has a girlfriend, so he's pretty much accounted for all the time.
Charlie, was that his first name?
Charlie's his first name.
Not Charles?
I think Charles is his legal name. No one calls him that.
What's his last name?
Adelson.
What's his middle?
J-A-Y.
Same spelling, Adelson.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh my god.
What?
What? Oh my gosh.
What?
I can't believe this is happening.
Okay, all right. Let me go get the form for the phone.
Do I need to be read my Miranda rights or something if you're gonna look at my phone?
I can read you Miranda if you want to hear
I
that.
don't know, I'm just trying to make sure I'm being
I have no
protected.
reason at this point to suspect you in this incident. Okay?
I couldn't tell from the way you were talking to me in the car if I was a suspect.
Well, no, and the reason was I didn't want to get into everything until we got up here.
Is he
Okay.
still in the hospital?
He's at the hospital, yes. Yes.
And he's alone.
Yes.
And nobody knows he's there.
Well, you know now, and while I'm going to get this phone taken care of, I'm going to have a victim advocate come in here, and hopefully you can supply her with his parents.
Oh my God.
You don't know anybody that he owed money to? You don't know anyone?
Just me.
I know, besides you. But
Danny, I defriended him from Facebook because I found it too upsetting to see intermittent pictures of the kids. He never hurt me physically, but he was emotionally abusive.
okay.
And I didn't tell most people that, so all most people know is it just didn't work out, and it's just the kids are young, and this is just better this way. So other than my family, who saw the way he treated me, most people were, well, I think his family was very surprised. He told everyone around the community that I was mentally ill because
And
only a
that's where
crazy
he was from
person would.
originally.
He's from there. He came here for college and never.
So there's a
never
lot.
left.
So he's 41 and he's been here since he was 18.
Did he go to FSU for law school?
But
No.
you know
Okay.
who
Where'd he go
would?
to
Yeah.
law
So
school?
that
Harvard.
that's it.
Harvard.
The circumstances, plain and
Uh,
simple, were it
and
just
then he got a
wasn't a really
position
healthy marriage.
as a
And
professor.
I thought we moved up here for his job. They didn't.
So you were in New
think
York
that's
too?
the way
No,
you
no,
I've never lived in New York.
Oh.
But he
I
was
was actually
he
at
didn't hit
University of
me, he
Miami
didn't
going
hit
to law
them.
school. We met.
He didn't have a
We got
drug
engaged,
problem.
and then I was going to
You
do my
know,
last
he didn't
year
gamble,
of law
he
school
didn't
up
cheat on
here.
me,
So
I didn't
he,
cheat on
in
him.
2005, we moved here.
There's no other. He was a professor and I was a student for one more year. And then we moved back to Miami for a year, and then we moved here for a year. The reason why I say his parents are going to say I did it is because after we got divorced, I wanted to move to South Florida, and I filed a petition to relocate in the court, and the court said no. So
Because of the kids.
because I mean, yeah. So you can always leave. You just can't leave with your kids. So, so we're in Tallahassee because of Danny's job.
So
Their
it
life
sounds like
that
you all are
love
doing
them.
the right thing.
And I get why I would be a suspect, but the idea that we were divorced, but the idea that I would ever do anything is like, I understand why they need to check, but
And
I don't know who would though. I don't know who would do this. I can see why they would think it would be me.
well, and I don't think. And did Investigator Isom talk to you at all about like what your role is in this?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out.
And a lot of times they do stuff just to kind of cancel you out too.
It's fine. I understand.
Okay.
I understand. I just can't believe this is happening.
You can, worry about you and your boys. Start thinking who would be someone that you want here for you that's here in Tallahassee now
What do you mean here for me? Like for what?
for support for you, because you're gonna have to go.
I'd really like my family to come.
Okay.
They're not here, but
Where are they located?
I'm just so upset right now that I'm worried about parenting effectively. So if
well, and that's why.
if my parents were here, they could help me. They're really close with the kids, so they could help me. I feel like you and I look a little bit alike. Do you see this as you're looking at my face?
You have very pretty blue eyes. They're much bluer than mine.
But I feel like, anyway, it's like
And the
looking
hair.
at my sister, similar hair. I must look awesome right now, but when I'm not in crisis, I'd really like my parents to be here and help me
Okay.
with the kids.
And so, for my information, what are your parents' names?
I feel like I should be the one to tell them.
No, I don't want. I'm not gonna go tell them. I'm just
Yeah.
more of, as
Who's
you know,
with
this
me?
time goes on, right? When you're referring to people, I want to know who you're
Sure.
talking about.
My parents' names are Donna and Harvey Adelson.
And did you say they were in Florida?
They are. They're splitting. They're sort of in the process of retiring.
Okay.
I mean, semi.
Mhm.
So they work together. They're super happy and in love. 40 plus years in, so they live in Coral Springs for part of the week and then in Miami for part of the week. So today is Friday and they're in Miami.
Okay, so is Miami like their weekend home then for them?
My brother Charlie got this place for them to sort of have them try living in Miami. So
Okay.
sometimes on the weekends they all hang out together. So they'll be there. I understand why I'm a suspect. I guess I'm not a suspect. I understand why you would think that I would do this, but not you, but
Right.
I'm just worried about the kids. And I'm so sorry for his family and for his children who are now going to grow up without a father. And I have no idea who would do this, and I feel like they're out there. And if they're capable of this, what's to keep them from going after the kids? If they hate Danny, then why wouldn't they hate his children?
And they're doing this investigation now to kind of figure out what happened.
He didn't do it to himself. There's no way he did it. He never really got depressed. He never got that sad. He was a really
Right.
positive guy.
Mhm.
It wasn't him.
And you know, just because you guys are divorced, you probably know him very well, probably better than anyone else does. So,
Except for the last 2 years, like I don't know specifics of like.
well, right, his personal life, but you still know his personality.
I do.
And, you know, personalities usually don't change very often, so.
Yeah. I'm gonna have a hard time not being sad in front of the boys. I need to tell them today, don't I?
I think you do.
Have you done this before? Doesn't
Have
matter
I
if
told,
you've done this before.
have I told children? You know, I have not as young as your boys.
What do I tell them?
You know where your boys are at. You know kind of what you've talked to your boys, you know, and I know they're so young, you know, some parents have conversations about life and death and things like that, and some haven't at that age.
We had our first conversation about God
Okay.
yesterday,
Okay.
ever. And Ben was clipping into his car seat, and Ben out of nowhere says, "Mommy, I bet Abba knows a lot more about God than you do." And I said, well, different people have different beliefs about God. And so we get to the car, and Ben was like, "Is God a man or a woman?" I said, well, some people believe that he or she is an old white man with a long white beard. And Lincoln, who's 3.5, said, "God is dead."
And is Ben's your oldest then, and then who's your 3.5-year-old?
Lincoln.
Lincoln?
And I
love that name.
said, Lincoln, like, I was like, it's like Nietzsche in the back seat. Like, I was like, Lincoln, who's still in diapers, but is having a sophisticated conversation about God. And I just was laughing and laughing, and they were asking.
Here, let me go check with Joanna and see
Please.
where she got, if she got far with them.
The reason being is.
You need to talk to me.
Yes.
Okay.
And you've been great. I mean, you understand exactly how we have to do things, and I haven't had to explain a lot of stuff, but really, I feel the need to, I really want you here.
Okay.
If you know, and you're not under arrest or anything like that.
I understand why you
But
think I'm the
but-
primary suspect.
No, you're not the primary suspect. I have to work just as hard, whether you were or you're not.
Okay.
Okay.
I understand.
To show what your activities were.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And let's put it this way. I think you're a straightforward person, and I think at this point, if you had anything to do with this, you'd have already told me,
Okay.
and you haven't. So my thing is that let's let the.
My ex-husband caused me a lot of grief. I would never do something like that.
I know. And it's
So
gonna.
I understand why I would
Okay.
be the person you would think would do something, but
Well, we have to work just as hard to eliminate
it's
people.
fine. I want to figure out who this is because
Right.
I'm honestly worried.
Well, let me ask you, if you found out that this was someone that you personally know, would that change your mind about what should happen to that person
About what should happen to that person?
for prosecution purposes?
No.
Is
I mean,
there
if
any way that
somebody-
you would think
if
somebody
tried to kill my ex-husband, they should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law.
regardless of who it is?
I mean, it would be different if I thought it were my brother, but I don't think it was my family.
Okay.
Anyone outside my immediate family, that's a tough one. But
Okay.
I don't think my immediate family did this. So
Okay.
if it's anybody else, yeah.
Okay. Do you think that this guy Charlie would even be capable of doing something like this?
No. No.
Let's just talk.
He's the Joker.
Okay. All right.
The last time Rob Adelson saw his entire family together was in early July of 2014. Harvey, his dad, was turning 70, and the Adelsons threw a big party at their new Miami Beach condo. Rob and Haritha flew down with their 2 children. Wendi was there with her boys. Charlie was there too, of course. The crowd milled through the apartment and out onto the patio, which faced the golden sand of South Point Beach. A chef, who Wendi hired, served paella to guests. Harvey had grown up as a working-class kid in Brooklyn. Now he was living in a luxury complex in Miami filled with celebrities and other multimillionaires. He had his 3 children, a doctor, a dentist, and a lawyer, and his 4 grandchildren, all together. What more could a Jewish parent want? It was just a few weeks later that Rob and Haritha got the phone call that Dan had been shot.
Donna called me on Saturday morning. I think she had already tried Rob and couldn't get through.
Yeah, she had texted me a couple. I was at a meeting out of town. I was in Chicago. And when they spoke to me, they told me they'd already talked to Haritha. They texted me a couple times, and then they texted me they need to talk to me right now.
Rob excused himself from his meeting and stepped outside.
And I remember exactly where I was standing in the lobby, and they explained that something has happened. Somebody shot Danny, and they took him to the hospital, but he didn't make it.
He tried calling Wendi.
I called her multiple times. I called my parents multiple times. Finally, she actually called me at a strange time during the day when I happened to be free, and I picked up the phone, and she said she didn't want to talk about anything because her kids were around.
She seemed surprised he was available.
Yeah, she said she really just wanted to leave a message. And I said, well, you called me. And, I asked her point blank, what do you think happened? And her response was, well, Danny had no shortage of enemies. But that's the most we've talked about it. And that's one of two conversations we've had since Danny was killed.
Later, Rob would want to talk more with his family about what happened to Dan.
They just didn't want to talk about it.
They kept saying that it doesn't involve them, and that Wendi felt that I was only interested in who would have done this, which seems like a normal reaction when someone you know well is gunned down in their home. I think not being interested in a murder of someone you know well is unusual.
He never did get a straight answer from his family, which shocked him. And as affidavits appeared, suggesting members of his family may have ordered Dan's murder, Rob stopped speaking with them altogether.
And this is the same thing I've said from the very first moment this occurred, is I would like whoever was involved with killing Dan Markel to have the appropriate punishment, whoever it is.
Do you think that'll ever happen?
I think it's probably unlikely for that to happen.
Is this Mr. Markel's 23-page response to your motion to relocate?
You're asking me, is this
his response to your motion to relocate?
Yes, it looks like it.
All right, that's quite verbose. Would you agree with that?
I imagine it is. At some point, Danny fired or alienated all of his attorneys and started doing his own legal work. So
fair to say he was adamantly opposed to you taking his kids to South Florida.
Yes, he shared all of that here, which is different than the conversations we had. But
that's what he filed.
What he filed is what the judge sanctioned him for.
All
yes.
Right. And in that filing, I'm specifically referencing to page 82, where Markel states that the sole stated reason the wife seeks to relocate with the party's minor children is so she can be closer to her parents. My understanding is you don't agree that's why you wanted to move.
It wasn't the sole reason why I wanted to move.
Okay. But you do agree it was a reason.
It was absolutely a reason. I wanted to create some stability for my kids, and having family around helps have a more stable environment.
Is it fair to say that your mother, Donna Adelson, was following these divorce proceedings pretty closely?
She was definitely being a little bit over-involved, yeah.
She was pretty invested in your personal life. Is that fair to say?
She is one of those moms, yes.
All right. And we talked about your mom, Donna Adelson. Who's your father?
What is my father's name?
Mm-hmm.
Harvey Adelson.
And where do Donna and Harvey live currently?
They live in Miami.
All right. And are you still very close with your parents?
I am.
All right. And do you still live in close proximity to your parents?
I live about a 15-minute drive away.
And where did they live at the time that Dan Markel was killed?
They lived in Coral Springs, Florida.
And were you close with your mom back around the time that you were living in Tallahassee?
I was.
And did she have a close relationship with your children as well?
She did.
Are your parents employed?
Right now, they are both retired.
What about back in 2014?
In 2014, they were both employed.
How were they employed then?
Then my father had a dental practice, and my mom was managing his practice.
What's the name of the dental practice?
Dr. Harvey Adelson, DDS.
All right, does Adelson Institute ring a bell as well?
Yes.
And do you know whether the practice there was successful, meaning lucrative?
At one point it was, and
What about
not
between
anymore.
What about between 2013 and 2016? Was it lucrative at that time?
Between 2013 and 2016, it was definitely, the business was doing better than it did after that point when the social media barrage happened.
Referring to this case?
Absolutely.
Okay. But previous to the murder, the Adelson Institute was earning approximately $2 million in profit each year.
I have no idea what it was earning. I haven't the slightest idea, but
do you know whether your parents had other investments other than their work at the Adelson Institute?
I don't know.
You don't know if they own any properties?
I know now that they own properties, but I didn't then.
Okay, and do you know now that they owned properties then?
I actually don't know when they acquired the properties, so I don't know.
All right, was your divorce impacting your family financially? So this is prior to the murder and the social
It was certainly impacting me financially, but I don't think it was impacting the rest of my family.
All right, how many lawyers did you have in your divorce?
I had one, and then Danny accused her of ethical violations and stealing money, and so I had to hire a new attorney. I think he had 3 or 4.
No, I was talking about you. So you had 2.
I had one, and then I had to get another, yes.
All right, and who paid for those 2 attorneys?
I did.
Okay. Did your mom retire from the dental practice during the time of your divorce to facilitate her spending more time with the children?
No, she didn't retire from the dental practice. She did help me during the divorce and help me with the kids. They were very small, but she didn't retire. She just worked for my dad, so it was okay if she took a leave of absence here and there.
All right. Did you discuss your marital problems and the resulting legal issues with your mother?
I'm sure I did.
Is it fair to say your mother is a controlling person?
I think my mom is and was very invested in my life. I don't think of her as a controlling person.
Is it fair to say around the time of your divorce that your mom did not like Dan Markel?
I think that's fair to say. I think she was very disappointed by the way he treated me.
In fact, she despised him, didn't she?
I can't speak to how my mom felt or whether she despised him. I think she was very disappointed.
She sent you some emails to indicate her feelings about Dan Markel around that time, didn't she?
She did. Okay.
Did your mom ever refer to your husband as an asshole?
Yes.
A bully?
Yes.
A zealot?
A religious zealot, yes.
A jackass?
Yes.
A religious extremist?
Yes.
What about Jibbers? She calls him Jibbers?
Yeah, Jibbers is not a bad name. It was a silly name that I came up with during a period of time when I felt incredibly terrorized by Danny. And so it was a word that I would use to kind of make him seem less scary.
Is it fair to say that it was a derogatory term?
No.
Okay, but you came up with it directly in relation to him terrorizing you.
I did. It was a way to take the steam out of a situation I found scary. I wouldn't say it was derogatory. I just think it was.
And when you say scary, are you alleging physical abuse?
I'm not alleging physical abuse.
All right. What types of things did your mother suggest that you could do to try to coerce or acquire the ability to relocate your kids to Miami?
She suggested that I could change the religion.
Of who?
Of my children.
And why would that affect the relocation effort?
Because religion was so important to Danny that would be a real hot button thing.
Okay.
Okay.
How much money was your family willing to put up to bribe Dan Markel to let you move to Miami with your kids?
They said that they would go as high as $1 million, which would be $333,000 each.
And who are the each?
my mom, my dad, and Charlie.
Did you have an alternative? You mentioned previously that there was a hostile work environment at Florida State University as a result of your husband. Or your ex-husband at this point, was the failure to be able to relocate, did that cause you to remain in that environment?
It did.
For how long?
I don't remember the date that the petition to relocate was denied. If you could show me the binder, I could. It was June 20th, 2013. So I was still working at the law school through July 2014, so I stayed for one more year.
Okay, and it was subsequent to his death that you were able to find new employment that was in a less hostile work environment. Is that accurate?
I mean, eventually after his death, I found new employment. It took me a little while.
Okay. How long did you stay in Tallahassee after your husband was killed? Ex-husband, sorry.
Stayed a couple of days. And then after I had asked the police for protection at the funeral or in my home and they refused, I decided to just go for a couple of days and spend a few days away from Tallahassee. And then this case hit CNN and hit the media, and I didn't feel safe.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but the question was, how long did you stay in Tallahassee after your husband was killed?
I'm sorry, Ms. Kappelman. I stayed for a few days.
Thank you. All right, so how did your mom take the news that you were not going to be able to relocate?
She was very upset.
All right, I want to talk a little bit about the litigation that continued after your divorce was final. Was there a motion to enforce the marital settlement agreement and hold Dan Markel in contempt of court filed by you?
Yes.
All right. And a few months later, did he respond with a counter motion to enforce the marital settlement agreement's final provisions, alleging some violations that he said you made on the marital settlement agreement?
Yes.
And these filings are pretty venomous. Is that a fair characterization?
Not on my part.
Well, on both your parts, right?
No, ma'am.
Okay. And he accuses you of various things, lying about your financial affidavit and things like that. Would you agree?
He does make those accusations. They were completely baseless, but yes.
All right. In the pleadings, is the tennis racket mentioned as something to fight over? And I can draw your attention to that page in line if you need it.
I imagine it could have been. You can draw my attention if you like, and I can confirm.
Okay, but no reason to argue about the fact that a tennis racket is mentioned specifically in your divorce documents.
No. I mean, that sounds like some of the nonsense that we argued over, sure.
Okay. And was there a motion? I want to draw your attention specifically to this motion. It's on page 441 of that document in front of you, Exhibit 59. This motion was filed by Dan Markel on March 26th of 2014, so shortly before his death.
I see it.
Okay, what was that motion?
Former husband's counter motion for enforcement of MSA on parenting issues and motion for contempt and sanctions.
And in that motion, did he allege that you were violating the marital settlement agreement in a variety of ways?
Yes, it looks like he did.
Including failing to facilitate communication between he and the boys, failing to keep him informed of where his kids are, failure to communicate about parenting decisions like the kids' schooling, diet, and extracurricular activities, things like that.
Yes, that looks right.
All right. And was he, as part of this motion, seeking to enjoin you from allowing your mother to have time with the children that was unsupervised by another adult?
I am not seeing that right now, but I can continue reading through
Okay,
it.
take your time.
Actually, oh wait, still going.
Is this a question that you need refreshing on? Did your husband make these allegations? You don't have an independent recollection of that?
I don't have an independent recollection.
Okay.
He made a lot of allegations that weren't true, so I need
All
to
right.
look through to figure out which ones we're talking about.
Okay.
Okay, I see it. I see what you're referencing.
All right, so in that filing, Dan Markel alleges that your mother is disparaging him to the children, correct?
That is correct.
And he was seeking a court order saying she couldn't have contact with the kids unless there was another adult present, correct?
I see that here. I don't think I took it seriously at the time, so it didn't really lodge in my memory.
Did
But
your
I-
mom take it seriously?
No,
Was it ever ruled on?
I don't know. If it were, it should be here, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it here?
No, it's not. It was scheduled to be ruled on in August of 2014, right?
I don't know. I don't know when it was scheduled for. I do know that nobody took it very seriously.
Okay, so your mom wasn't worried about that motion being granted? Okay. Are you aware of any connection at any time between your brother Charlie and any gang members?
No.
Did your brother use drugs?
He did, yeah.
What type of drugs did he use?
Marijuana.
Okay, what else?
I don't know of anything else.
Okay. And do you know where he got the drugs from that he used?
I don't.
Okay. Was he a recreational marijuana user or was he a drug dealer?
I would say he was a recreational marijuana user.
Okay. Was this something he did every day or just occasionally?
I don't know how often. I don't know if it was every day, but I do know the pain of the last few years has led him to do some self-medicating.
Okay, but I'm really speaking of the time frame I should have clarified, 2013 to 2014.
I don't know if he was using any drugs during that time.
Okay. But you became aware of it subsequent to the incidents that we're here about today?
That's right.
Okay. Were you aware that your brother, I think you testified he sometimes worked at the Adelson Institute. What did you mean by that? Where else does he work?
So he is a periodontist, and he has kind of a traveling practice of sorts. So he would work in various doctors' offices throughout Broward, Dade, and Palm Beach counties. And so sometimes he would work from my dad's practice, but sometimes he would work from different offices. I don't know how often he worked at which one. I just know he worked at various offices.
All right, so I asked you, I'm sorry to change topics on you so much, but previously we were talking about your two brothers. Is your other brother, not Charlie, but your other brother, is he located here in Florida?
He is not.
All right, and back in 2014, was he living in another state?
He lived in Gainesville for a while. I'm trying to remember in 2014 if he was in Gainesville. I don't think so. I think he was in another state.
All right, so been in another state throughout the incidents we're here about today?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. All right, now back to what we were talking about with your brother Charlie's practice. So he travels around to different dentist offices and performs a specific service, like on a contract basis. All right, and are you aware that he does that type of work or offers a discount for that type of work if his customers pay in cash?
I'm not aware of that.
Are you aware of your brother carrying large amounts of cash?
He did sometimes carry more cash than I would, but not like big sums of cash, no.
And did you observe the cash that he carried to be stapled together in packs?
No, I never saw staples.
Has your brother ever been married?
No.
How would you describe the kind of lifestyle your brother was enjoying back around the time of these incidents, 2013, 2014?
I think he lived a bachelor lifestyle, very different than mine. Would enjoy nice restaurants, had lots of girlfriends.
Not a lot of responsibilities.
Not a lot of responsibilities.
A lot of girlfriends.
You say not a lot of?
A lot of different girlfriends.
Always a different girl, yeah.
Yeah. Who is Jerome Obed?
He is a person who used to live with my brother.
Do you know the time frame that he lived with your brother?
I remember I introduced him to his current wife, and that was maybe 2011. So maybe during the period, I don't know how much, I can tell you he was living with them that year, but I don't know for how long before or how long after they lived together. They were friends though.
Oh, so, okay, so you can't tell us whether he was living with your brother in the 2013-2014 time frame that we're here about.
I don't remember.
Okay. And is Mr. Obed also a doctor, a dentist?
He is a dermatologist.
Dermatology, thank you. All right, and your brother, we were talking about his lifestyle and the girlfriends. Does he also drive fancy cars?
He does.
Including a Ferrari?
Yes.
All right. And were you aware of one of his girlfriends by the name of Catherine Magbanua?
Yes.
Did you ever have the opportunity to meet that particular girlfriend?
Yes, we met maybe 2 or 3 times.
2 or 3 times? Do you recall what the occasions were?
There was one time we had dinner when I was in town, which is what I did every time I'd come to town and have dinner with my brother and a different girl. And then one time I went to the beach for an hour or so, and she and a friend of hers joined us.
Okay. And was there a third time?
I don't actually remember a third time.
All right. So was there anything special about this girlfriend in terms of her relationship with your brother? Did they seem closer or more serious?
It didn't seem serious.
Were you off-put by Ms. Magbanua for any reason? Did she seem like different from the ordinary trail of women that came through his life?
She seemed perfectly nice.
Did you bond with her in a special way? Did you have a different type of relationship with her than you had with any of his other girlfriends?
No, I mean, if anything, I'd say I'd been closer to other girlfriends. I only met her twice.
All right. What about her ex, Sigfredo Garcia? Were you aware of him at all before this case?
No.
So you didn't even know she had an ex?
I knew she had an ex because my brother once mentioned that he was dating a girl and she had an ex that seemed a little scary. And I said, maybe you should stay away from that.
Yeah, and so the ex, did you have specific knowledge about why he was a little scary?
No.
And did Catherine Magbanua ever tell you anything that was specifically scary about him?
No.
Were you aware of your brother having any communications with the scary ex-husband?
No, only that my brother seemed a little scared of him, but I don't know that they talked or didn't talk.
So it would be surprising to you to learn that they had a relationship.
Very.
What about your ex-husband, Dan Markel? Did you ever know him to be involved with any type of drug activity or gangsters, anything like that?
No, Danny consulted on criminal law cases, so I do remember there being a case involving Orthodox rabbis that were engaging in some very violent activity, and that had me concerned, but other than that, no.
Okay. Not in his personal life?
No.
Okay. Was your brother Charlie, or is your brother Charlie, protective of you?
He is, yeah.
Was there a dinner, a time when you went out to dinner with your brother after the murder where you vomited at the table? That happened? It's just yes or no.
What would you like to know the context? It did happen.
Okay, and who was present at that dinner?
Just my brother and me.
Okay, and that was kind of your first time out after this murder had occurred, right?
After it happened, I couldn't eat for several weeks, and then I was completely terrified to leave my house. So this was the first time I tried to leave the house and eat food, and that is how it ended up. I threw up.
At the dinner table, in a restaurant?
Yes, it was very embarrassing.
How long after the murder was that incident?
Probably about a month or so.
Was the dinner intended to be a celebration of the fact that your husband was murdered?
Absolutely not.
Did your brother refer to it as a celebration?
I highly doubt that.
Could that have been one of his jokes that was in bad taste?
He may have been celebrating the fact that I was willing to leave the house.
All right. Were you involved in the plot to kill your husband?
Absolutely not.
Did you have knowledge of the plot to kill your husband?
No.
But you suspected that your family was involved?
No, I did not suspect that my family was involved.
Did you mention in your interview with law enforcement that you suspected that your family could be behind this?
I think I speculated about lots of things during the 6 hours I spent with law enforcement without an attorney present trying to help them solve this murder. Yes, I said all kinds of things.
All right, and one of the things you said was that your family very much disliked him and that you thought it was possible that someone had done this on your behalf, unbeknownst to you.
I did say I thought someone might have done this on my behalf, yes.
And who did your brother know that had connections that could get something like that done?
I have no idea.
Do you know Catherine Magbanua?
I have met Catherine Magbanua twice, as I mentioned.
After the murder of Dan Markel, was it your practice to tell people, just acquaintances and peripheral people in your life, that he had been involved in an accident?
I don't believe so.
Do you know whether that was something that your brother told people?
I have no idea what my brother told people.
Did you ever hear your brother, Charlie Adelson, tell someone Dan Markel was involved in an accident?
No, I've never heard that. I was just thinking, law enforcement told me when they were interviewing me that I wasn't supposed to tell anyone what happened until it was released, but...
And that was just the day of?
That was the day of.
Okay. Did you or your children benefit financially from your husband's death?
Absolutely not.
Did your husband have a life insurance policy?
He did have a life insurance policy.
And what was the value of that policy?
I don't know what the value of it was at the time. I do know that his sister's the custodian of that life insurance policy, and I pay taxes on that money every year, but we don't receive any of it.
What was the value of it at the time of your husband's death?
It was $1 million.
Not $2 million?
$1 million for each child.
$2 million. All right, and did you believe prior to your husband's murder that you were the custodian of that money for the benefit of the boys?
No, we were divorced, so I was the custodian while we were married, but once we were divorced, I was no longer the custodian.
So you were aware that he had designated someone else to do that job? You didn't inquire through your attorney about challenging the designation of the sister as the custodian of that money?
I wasn't trying to challenge the designation, no.
Do you have access personally to that money?
No.
All right. What about a 401k? Did your ex-husband have a 401k when he died?
I believe he did.
All right. And are you the custodian of that money for the benefit of the boys?
I am. That's how I pay the taxes.
All right. Did he have a pension?
I don't know.
Social Security benefits?
I don't know if he had Social Security benefits. As survivors, my children receive Social Security benefits.
$4,800 a month, right?
That's right.
Deferred compensation fund?
I don't remember.
$217,000. Does that sound familiar?
I don't remember.
What about the IRA? Did he have an IRA?
I really don't know.
$100,000?
It's very possible.
What about a checking account?
I don't know if I assume he had a checking account.
$15,000 in there, right?
Wouldn't go to us, but sure, I imagine he had a checking account.
It wouldn't go to you and the boys? Where did it go?
Funeral expenses?
Okay. Okay, and who has full custody of your two boys?
Me.
And does your mom have any issues with having access to your boys, or does she have full access to your kids?
I mean, there's no issues with access, no.
How often would you say your mom sees the kids?
I think it depends on the week, but probably at least once or twice a week.
How old are your boys now?
They're 11 and 12.
How old were they when their dad was killed?
It was 10 days before my older son's birthday, so he was almost 5. And my younger son was 3.5.
Did you change their legal names about a month or so after the murder?
No, not a month or so after the murder, no.
Okay. When was it done? Even sooner than that?
No, absolutely not. When I tried to put my children in school and their faces had been unblurred on CNN and all across social media,
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but if you'll answer my question is, when were the boys' names changed?
The boys' names were changed after I wrote a letter to Danny's family explaining why I was changing their names.
When were their names
About
changed?
a year after.
Okay, and that was when they were legally changed, July 6, 2015?
I don't remember the date, but if you have it, that sounds correct.
Okay, so they were legally changed on that date, but just a month or so after the murder, when you were enrolling them in school, is when they effectively had their names changed.
That is not true.
Okay. And what did you change their names from and to?
I changed their last name from their father's last name to mine.
From Markel to Adelson?
That is correct.
And did you also drop the middle name of one of your boys that was a tribute to his paternal side?
It was a tribute to both families.
Did you drop it?
I did. I lost an honor to both families that day, yes.
Now, years later, arrests are made. It's clear who committed the murder, Sigfredo Garcia Luis Rivera. The Adelson name has been dragged through the mud. Why haven't you continued to protect your boys and changed the name back?
I will be changing I'm not going to change the name back. I don't think that will help. One day I'll change all of our names.
Do you want the culpable parties in this murder held accountable?
Absolutely.
And even if it involves your own family?
Absolutely.
Do you recall giving an interview with law enforcement on the day that your ex-husband was murdered?
I recall sitting with law enforcement for 6 hours, yes, I recall.
And did you tell law enforcement something different in that interview about the culpability of your family?
I'm sure while I sat for 6 hours completely traumatized that I said all kinds of things.
All right, and was one of the things you said while you sat for 6 hours completely traumatized that you wanted the culpable parties held accountable unless it was your family?
I don't believe I phrased it like that, and I think you're taking my words out of context, but sure.
But sure?
But sure what?
No further questions.
Ms. Adelson, this is all about you, isn't it?
Excuse me?
This is all about you, right?
I was called to be a witness and I'm testifying, so I don't understand the question. Is it a question?
Let's talk about your brother's jokes now. You don't deny that he joked about hiring a hitman.
He did.
You don't deny that he repeated this joke.
He did.
And he made this joke right before a hitman murdered Professor Markel.
I don't know that to be true.
Okay. He made the joke right before, and I'll leave out the hitman part, Professor Markel was killed.
He made the joke the morning that I talked to him.
Yeah. Can you think of one person in this world that would actually hire two people to go kill Professor Markel other than your family?
Your Honor.
Ms. Adelson, please address me and answer the question.
It calls for an unbelievable amount of speculation. I mean, I'm responsible for coming up with, that's the prosecutor's duty, no? To figure out who's responsible.
You just said a moment ago that you disagree that hitman killed Professor Markel. That's what you said, right? So my question to you is, if you're able to say, well, it wasn't hitman, then who? Tell this jury. Who on this planet would have wanted to kill Professor Markel?
I have no idea.
All right. Let's get into that a little bit. But I want to make sure that's clear. This joke is made right before Professor Markel is murdered, right?
The joke was made many times.
It was made right before Professor Markel was murdered. Yes or no?
Yes.
July 18, 2014, you're interviewed, and you make a statement saying, I knew this would happen. You said that, right?
I did.
All right. Now I want to talk about your knowledge and your belief on this. You're a smart person, right?
How am I supposed to answer that?
Well, let's go through your resume. You went to Brandeis University, right?
I did.
You graduated magna cum laude.
I did.
If you could explain to the jury what that means.
It means I studied a lot and got good grades.
All right. It means, and to speak, I'm from the Northeast. My Boston accent may give it away. It means you're wicked smart, right?
That's very
You had a
nice.
high
Thank
GPA,
you.
a very high GPA.
I work hard.
You also went and you got a master's degree from the University of Cambridge.
I did.
You were a Gates Scholar.
I was.
You then go to the University of Miami School of Law, which is a top-tier law school, Tier 1, right?
Okay.
Right? We're talking about your level of intelligence. You went to the University of Miami Law School, right?
I did, yes.
You also clerked at the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, right?
I did.
Now, to get a clerkship out of law school, it's a very difficult thing to do, right?
It's challenging.
You have to have top grades. You have to go through a rigorous selection process, right?
Yes.
You then become a professor at the Florida State University College of Law, right?
Yes.
You're also a published author, right?
Now you're just embarrassing me.
Why are you embarrassed that you're a published author?
I don't like talking about myself.
Let's stay on topic and ask the question again with everything that we just went through. You're a smart woman, right?
I am a smart woman.
There's information about this case everywhere. You'd agree with me on that, right?
I'd been advised by my lawyer not to read it.
All right. Now, we're not talking about reading stuff. There's podcasts,
Also not to listen.
TV shows,
Also not to watch.
articles.
Don't read.
And so you've made the decision. Now, you're a lawyer yourself too, right?
I am.
And you made the decision, I'm not going to look at any of this stuff.
Correct.
I don't want to know what happened to the father of my 2 children.
Not I don't want to know what happened.
How can you say you love those boys if you don't care who killed the father that they loved?
Of course I care who killed the father that they loved.
Then why won't you look at the stuff?
I've been advised not to.
Are you afraid that when you look at it, you're going to realize that your brother did this?
I am not afraid of that.
So what happened to their son? By you looking at it, you are at the center of all this, but you won't look at anything to help in the process.
I've done nothing but help in this process.
You came here and testified.
I came here and testified. I spoke to the police for 6 hours without anyone present. I signed over my cell phone, my car, my house, everything, my computer. What else do I have or know that you haven't seen?
You came here because you were subpoenaed and had no choice,
Correct.
right?
This is not fun. I would not
been-
do this by choice.
Do you honestly expect this jury to believe that you haven't confronted your brother about all of this?
Yes, I do.
Yes, you did confront him?
Yes, I do expect them to believe that I did not confront my brother because I didn't.
Or maybe you don't need to because you know the truth in this case. You already know it. That he went behind your back, right?
Did not happen.
Just like he has done with past boyfriends. He's done that in the past where he's gone behind your back when you were having problems in a relationship and dealt with it himself.
No.
Miss Adelson, you understand that until you expose your brother what he did, that everybody's going to consider you as guilty. You understand that, right?
What is the question that you're asking me?
You understand that until you expose your brother and explain what he did, that he went behind everybody's back, that he hired a hitman to murder your ex-husband, you'll remain guilty in the eyes of the world.
I can't speak to the eyes of the world. I can only know that I have done nothing wrong.
Are your parents here in Tallahassee right now?
No.
Are they back in Miami?
Yes.
Do they have any plans of coming here this week or next?
I don't think so.
And you agree with me that it had been years since 2016, since the last time they had seen them.
The visits stopped when they threatened to put my children in foster care, yes. But up until that point, they did have visits.
But you got no problem letting them see your brother Charles, right?
I'm sorry?
You have no problem letting them hang out with your brother Charles, who's now sitting in custody for first-degree murder.
Oh, they can't see him now, can they?
No, they can't, but I'll ask the questions. For years, they weren't able to see their grandchildren despite their pleading to you to see them. But you let them, let me finish, but you let them hang out with your murdering brother, right?
The children were permitted to see their grandparents. I cooked for them. We had play dates. They had sleepovers. When a letter surfaced that they were trying to have my children placed in foster care, the visits stopped. My brother never threatened to put my children in foster care, and if he had, the visits would have stopped with him too.
You say you love your boys.
I do say I love my children.
don't care about the father that they loved. What
I
happened?
never said that I don't care about the father that they
Then
love.
look at some of the discovery and help figure it out.
Excuse me?
Then look at some of the evidence and help figure it out so that more lives aren't ruined by this.
I seem to
Mr.
not
DeCoste,
understand.
you need to ask a question now. You're making statements now. You need to ask a question.
Understood, Your Honor. If I could have one brief second to check with co-counsel.
So, listen, you were asked about the reason why you stopped contact for a period of time between your ex-husband's parents and your children.
Yes.
And you referenced a letter that you characterized as the grandparents threatening to put the children into foster care. Is that an email that was sent from the Markels to my office?
Yes.
Okay. And that was in reference to, in the event that you and the people that care for these children, who at the time were very young, were arrested, that the grandparents wanted to make sure, because they live in Canada, right?
They do.
They wanted to make sure that a specific organization could be contacted to care for the children so that someone was there to care for them until a relative could get there.
I don't remember the bit about a relative getting there.
Okay, well, they weren't just going to leave them in foster care, right?
I don't know.
Okay. But the specific nature of the email, you will agree, was in the event that there's some kind of mass arrest, because they don't know who's getting ready to go to jail next, right? I mean, they're not privy to the investigation any more than you are, right? Law enforcement investigations, they're secret.
Sure.
Okay. And their concern, would you agree the concern ultimately in the email was for the care of the children?
The concern was to make sure the children were under good care, but as their mother, I know they're always under good care with me.
Right, but
and there's no need for foster
care. The email
care.
contemplated you not being available to care for them.
That's not possible.
Because it's not possible for you to get arrested.
Correct, because I've done nothing wrong and I believe in our justice system.
Okay. Well, just wanted to clarify the nature of that. In this case, you were asked about, why aren't your parents coming to testify? You, as you mentioned, gave a police interview in this case, right?
Correct.
And consented to the search of your phone, etc. You gave testimony in this case, right?
Yes.
All right. And your parents did not, correct?
They did not give testimony.
They have not testified. They
They've
have
not been
given a
asked to
police...
come testify, but they would if they were asked.
Okay. And have they given any police interviews?
They would have, but the police never contacted them.
The police did contact them, didn't they? And they refused.
No.
Are they represented by counsel?
They are represented by counsel.
And they'll come testify if we want them to.
If they are under state subpoena, just like I was, they would come testify.
All right. And do you know what they would testify to?
They would testify to whatever they know.
And do you know what they know?
I have no idea what they know.
Okay. They've never told you?
No.
You've never asked them?
No.
Because you never had any conversations with them about this murder?
I've been advised by my counsel not to.
All right. So nobody, including your brother Charlie, has admitted or denied to you any involvement in the murder one way or the other?
Correct.
Same with your parents?
Correct.
I want to participate in Democracy Lives in Miami because this city is very important to me. I chose this as the place to live, to raise my children, and to face some of the issues that I think are most pressing in our country and in our world today. I was raised in a family where I understood from a very early age that we were privileged to live in America, and that my ancestors came from a place where they fled religious persecution. And so I understood that had decisions been different, had laws in this country prevented my ancestors from arriving, that we never would have survived where we came from.
The bottom line is that Dan Markel was killed by two hitmen whose only possible connection is through a woman, Katie McMonagle, who Charlie Adelson was dating at the time, right? Not only that, but his own sister, Wendi, said that Charlie looked into hiring a hitman, right? His own sister has testified at trial twice that Charlie looked into hiring a hitman. So in my view, that evidence just alone, that the fact that these two people drove from Miami to Tallahassee, killed Dan Markel, the only possible connection is through a woman Charlie was dating at the time, and Charlie's own sister says that he looked into hiring a hitman. This is a slam dunk case. And so I think that the only question is, and I think that, Charlie recently switched lawyers. So Charlie's new lawyer is no doubt taking stock of the evidence and figuring out what are my options here. And, quite frankly, I mean, there aren't any good options for Charlie Adelson right now. There's no way he's going to win a trial. And I think there's a real question as to whether he's considering testifying against other members of his family. Is he really going to be the only one in this family that goes down for this? And then there's the question of whether what the prosecution is willing to offer him. What is the prosecution willing to offer him to testify against, for example, his sister, Wendi? I don't know the answer. I'd be surprised, given his central role, if they were willing to say, oh yeah, you can do 1 year in jail and then you can get out. But, would they be willing to offer him, 10 years, 15 years? I don't know. And would he do that? So I think that's the real question right now.